let's talk about Vancouver Canucks trade rumors and Jim Benning's extension. Well, starting things off, I wanted to talk about Erik Gudbranson. And this is a topic I want to talk about because I mentioned it previously in the video about defense, and somebody in the comments was asking, oh, what's up with Erik Gudbranson? Well, I'm going to tell you guys what's up with Erik Gudbranson because the general consensus around Twitter, around scouts, around people who follow the league and who are in touch with the league, the general consensus there is basically Gudbranson's going to get traded to an Atlantic team. For some reason, and don't quote me on this, but for some reason, the general belief around the NHL is that Erik Gudbranson is kind of revered. A lot of GMs around the league believe that Erik Gudbranson is worth a first rounder and something else. There's a big gap between what Vancouver Canucks fans believe Erik Gudbranson's worth and what a lot of Atlantic, specifically Florida, Ottawa, Toronto general managers believe Erik Gudbranson is. Because we all know Gudbranson, and I don't know if anybody in Vancouver would realistically say that Erik Gudbranson is worth any more than a third. But GMs see the value in him. They like having a locker room guy who's big, who can speak French, who's right-handed, and who can dominate the game physically, and who's a big presence out there on the ice. GMs like that, and for some reason, that's why the general belief amongst scouts and trade rumor people and all that, the general belief is that Erik Gudbranson is worth a lot. And the belief here, it doesn't align, definitely, with what we see as Vancouver Canucks fans, because none of us would trade a first for Erik Gudbranson, right? He's not worth that. And GMs in the NHL, they think he's worth that, so that's why Jim Benning is really on the hot seat right now, and he has been for quite a while. There have been many tweets that have come out and have since been deleted by people who have broken Canucks tweets in the past, talking about how an Erik Gudbranson trade to an Atlantic team, whether that be Ottawa or Toronto, it's very, very close. Which is why I am a firm believer that by the end of next week, Erik Gudbranson is no longer a Vancouver Canuck. And that's not even just Erik Gudbranson individually. This also falls on Benning because, of course, he's the one who ultimately decides what the trade is and who he gets involved with. When it also comes out is also a factor that is under his control, which is very important at this stage. And it's very important because Jim Benning is on the cusp of ending his first contract with Vancouver. Whether he gets extended or not, it's coming. The end of his contract is coming up, and he hasn't been extended yet. And there's a reason for that, of course. There's a reason as to why Jim Benning hasn't been extended, and I believe that the real reason as to why he hasn't been extended yet is, well, they're waiting to see what he's gonna do. They need to know that he's on the right page here. Because if you look at the draft picks, okay, that's absolutely a reason why he should be staying with our franchise. If you look at the trades, though, they've been good recently, I'll give you that. But not the entirety. And neither have the free agent signings, for the most part. I mean, we've had some really good signings recently with Vanek and Gagne and all that. Those are good deals that who knows what's going to happen to those players, but those contracts are good. The only really bad contract in recent memory, we got ourselves Louis Eriksson, and some other contract extensions that weren't really ideal, but for the most part, Jim Benning as a general manager, with his tenure with the Canucks, looking at the trades, the signings, the contract alignments, the draft picks, I don't know if the guys who are going to extend his contract really believe that he is the best option moving forward. Sure, if you take a look at the draft picks, yeah, absolutely, but everything else, what about that everything else? And that everything else really is important because that is what dictates a general manager's performance. It is that everything else compiled with the draft picks. And that's why he hasn't been extended yet. Because the trade deadline is coming up. And the trade deadline, once it comes, this is when the Vancouver Canucks will make their statement. The trades that Jim Benning makes from now until the day after the trade deadline, these are the moves that will define whether or not Jim Benning comes back next season as the Vancouver Canucks GM. We're confident in his drafting. That's the one thing that I will say about Benning that we are absolutely on board with, because his drafting has been impeccable. But the signings, the extensions, the trades, not all of those have been perfect, and there have been some questionable moves for sure, which is why we're waiting for the deadline. Because once we get guys like Erik Gudbranson off the team, once we maybe trade Chris Tanev, once we maybe trade Thomas Vanek, once we trade all these guys, that is, if we end up trading them, the return that we get for these players is what's going to define Jim Benning. Because if he can pull off more trades, like Alex Burrows for Dahlin, 1-for-1, Goldolbin and a conditional fourth for Yannick Hansen, if he can pull off trades like that again, then I'd be fine with extending him. The reason why I'm not so confident that he is extended today is because we've had those good trades recently that I just mentioned, yeah. But what about the trades before that? What about the trades like Jared McCann and a second and a fourth for Gudbranson and a fifth? What about the trades like Sutter and a conditional third for Bonino, Clendenning, and a second? What about the trades like Gustav Forsling for Adam Clendenning? What about Eddie Lack? You can't say with certainty that all of these trades have been good trades. And we've only had a recent string of good trades. The most recent trades we've had is Derek Pouliot, Goldolbin, Dahlin. And all of those trades are definitely wins for our team. So if he's able to pull off more trades like that, where we get rid of some older kind of guys and we bring in younger talent, we bring in draft picks, we bring in assets that the Vancouver Canucks fan base and organization definitely will benefit from. And these are the moves that will guarantee Jim Benning's success and his stay with the Canucks. But if that doesn't happen, if we have another situation like Hamhuis and Verbata, where these guys don't get traded and they walk at the deadline, if we have another situation like that, Benning's not going to stay. If we have that happen with Thomas Vanek, if we have that happen with Erik Gudbranson, if we fail to capitalize on our assets and what we have once again, Benning's not going to stay. His drafting is awesome, yes, but everything else is what makes a GM a GM. So I hope that Jim Benning is able to make some really good moves, either from now up till the deadline or on the deadline itself. And I strongly believe that whatever we get for Erik Gudbranson, it's gonna be a win for our team. Because Erik Gudbranson realistically is worth like a fourth and a fifth, maybe a third by itself. And for some reason, he's revered around the league and he's apparently worth a first. That's what the general consensus is amongst other GMs, so whatever the situation is, whatever we get back, it will most likely be better than the third round pick that he is basically worth individually, because Gudbranson's not really that good of a player, man. Like, I don't know what else to say. He's just not worth a first, but for some reason teams think he is, so if we get a first, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And if Jim Benning is able to define his assets towards these other teams, and these other teams are like, yep, I'll give you a first and something else for him, and Benning's like, yep, I'll take it. If he pulls off moves like that, he's guaranteeing his stay. Hope you guys enjoyed this video replacing the rules like Last Wrestling and Gaming, and bye.